73 spiritual discourses from this great being known as Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Today we're reading one of his discourses in Gadhadā 170, known as Kakabhai's question, a thief injured by a thorn. On Chaitra Sudhi Punam, Samvat 1876, which is the 29th of March, 1820, Shriji Maharaj, our protagonist here, was sitting on a large decorated cot on the veranda outside the east-facing rooms of Dada Ghachar's Darbar in Gadhadā. He had tied a white cloth with a border of silken thread around his head. He was wearing a white case and had covered himself with a white cotton cloth. With his hand he was turning a rosary of tulasi beads. At that time, an assembly of Paramahansas, great monks, as well as devotees from various places had gathered before him. Now, if I know the Paramahansas, every time they are here with Shriji Maharaj, they always ask the most technical questions. So I think we're in for a mouthful today. Probably. We'll have to see. Then Shriji Maharaj said, "The senior Paramahansas, oh my goodness, the senior Paramahansas, now we're in for it. Please ask each other questions. Or, if a householder has a question, they may ask the Paramahansas." Thereupon, Kākābhāi, a devotee from the village of Rojka, asked Nityanand Swami, yet another name for Shriji Maharaj or Bhagwan Swaminarayan. Yes, I can turn the background music down. I forgot to do that this whole time. Deep within one's heart, something beckons one to indulge in the Vishais. This is the experiences of the senses. Whether it be engaging in something you really want to see or smell or hear or taste or touch or... That's all of them, isn't it? Whatever the experience of the senses is, in Sanskrit, Vishaya, something beckons one to indulge in them, while something also dissuades one from indulging in them, saying, "No, I shouldn't do this." What is it that says no, and what is it that says yes? Nityanand Swami replied, "It is the jiva that says no, and the mind that says yes." Oh, did I say that Nityanand Swami was another name for Shriji Maharaj or Bhagwan Swaminarayan? My apologies. Nityanand Swami is actually another person. Then Shriji Maharaj said, "Allow me to answer that question. From the very day we began to understand and realize who our parents were, they have imbued in us their own understanding that this is your mother, this is your father, this is your paternal uncle, and this is your brother, this is your maternal uncle, and this is your sister, this is your maternal aunt, and this is your paternal aunt, this is your mother's sister, and this is your buffalo, this is your cow, and this is your horse, these are your clothes, and this is your house, this is your mansion, and this is your farm, these are your ornaments, and so on. These words of Kusangis. Kusangis is an interesting word. Sangi means an associate, someone that you associate with. A Kusangi means someone that you shouldn't necessarily associate with. This lineage is really big on understanding that your family is so much more than your biological family. It should include everyone in the universe, and thus anything that restricts this view to see your family as as one thing and not everything, Shriji Maharaj, I've learned, has been very clear to let go of these limitations. These words of Kusangis have been imprinted in the mind. How are they imprinted? Well, it is rather like the small piece of glass that women attach into works of embroidery. I don't know what they're referring to. Maybe that means I'm not a woman. I don't know. The mind represents the embroidery, and the jiva represents the piece of glass. I guess it's an art form common in that time in India. Jiva is the individual soul. In this manner, the words and sights of those Kusangis, along with the other types of Vishais, experiences of the senses, have become imprinted in the mind. And exactly, Mermander, just like us, we are family here. And that is inclusive to everyone. Then, after that person enters the Satsang fellowship, just as we were talking about Kusang, associations that might not be sufficient for one's growth, Satsang are associations which are sufficient for one's growth. It means that you associate with the right things, the right people, the right places. So after that happens, the Sant, someone who embodies divine personality, like a saint, talks about the glory of the divine, denounces the Vishais, the experiences of the senses, and explains that the world is perishable, just as we were talking about before reading this, that everything physical in our lives, it comes and it goes. Thereby, the words and the sight of the Sant dwell in the person's mind. Analogously, then, there are two armies facing each other. For example, the armies of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, who are the two armies in the Bhagavad Gita, the greatest story in the world, just in terms of length. 100,000 verses. So, for example, the armies of the Kauravas and the Pandavas stood facing each other and fought with arrows, spears, projectiles, artillery, and chains. Some fought with swords, some with maces, others with their bare hands. In the process, some lost their heads, others injured their thighs, and many were slaughtered. In the same way, in the person's antakaran, their whole mind, are the forms of the Kusangis, those who have made an impression which is not to your benefit, standing armed with their weapons. In other words, the Panchavishais, the experiences of the five senses, as well as the form of the Sant, the saintly beings, standing armed with weapons in the form of words such as, the source is Satya. Satya means the truth, real. The world is perishable, and the Vishais, the experience of the senses, are false. A mutual conflict thus exists between two sets of words, when the force of the Kusangis, the negative associates, prevail. A desire to indulge in the Vishais, the experiences of the senses, arises. When the force of a Sant, a divine personality, prevails, the desire to indulge in the Vishais disappears. In this way, there is a conflict within the antakaran, within the mind. Hence, and yes, actually, Chelsea, I know what you're talking about. Satya is the name of a very common incense brand, isn't it? But yes, that's the Sanskrit word for truth or reality. Hence the verse, Yatra Yogeshwaraha Krishno Yatra Bharto Dhanur Dharaha Dhatra Shrir Vijayo Bhutir Drubha Nitir Matir Mama, which is the 78th verse of the 18th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. This verse explains, where there is Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar is, I think, a wonderful word. You know of the first part of that word, yoga. Yoga Ishvara. They come together to form the word Yogeshwara. Ishvara means Lord. Yogeshwara means the Lord of Yoga. I love that, which is another name for God. God is the Lord of Yoga. In particular, Sri Krishna Bhagwan is described as Yogeshwar. And where there is the great archer Arjun, only there do Lakshmi, which is prosperity or wealth, victory, divine powers, and resolute morality exist. It's true, Tattvamasi. Yogeshwar also refers to Shiva. In fact, just today I was learning that it's also an epithet for Shiva. But in this context, it refers to the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, one should have firm conviction that victory belongs to the one on whose side these sadhus, these monks, happen to be. Kakabhai then asked further, Maharaj, by what means can the force of the Sant, the Divine Personality, increase and the force of the Kusangis decrease? To this, Shriji Maharaj replied, the Kusangis residing within and those residing externally are both one. That is to say, all of those negative people in our surroundings that we associate with, those are precisely the same beings that are responsible for the negative voice from within. That is why it's so important to associate with Satsangis, associates which are here to lead you to your own welfare. As such, Shriji Maharaj continues, also the Sant, the Divine Personality residing within, and the one residing externally are both one. This is one of the most remarkable facts about a Divine Personality too, is that when you surround or identify or associate with a profound personality that has a positive message, the same voice appears within you. This is true especially for a spiritual teacher. If you ever have a guru, that the voice of reason within you, that is your guru, arising from the association of the guru in the world as well. Now, the force of the internal kusangis, the negative associates, increases with the nurturing of the external kusangis. In the same way, the force of the Sant, the Divine Personality, or the Satsangi, within increases with the nurturing of the Sant residing externally. Therefore, by avoiding the company of external kusangis, and by keeping the company of only the Sant residing externally, the force of the kusangis decreases, and the force of the Sant increases. That is how Shriji Maharaj answered the question. And I love this duality between what's happening in here and what happens outside around us. And I think we see that in the shift in our culture. Within the last decade or so, people are really big on cutting toxic influence out. I don't like the word toxic myself, but it carries with it that idea that we should refrain from associating with bad influences, and we should associate with good influences, because that makes a drastic effect on what's happening inside here. And hello, Jess. And hello, Pazeon. That is how Shriji Maharaj answered that question. Again, Kākābhāi asked, Maharaj, which means great king, on the one hand, there is a person who has overcome the fight against Kusangis. They no longer associate with such people, and for whom only the force of the Sant, the Divine Personality, is predominant. On the other hand, there is another person whose conflict is still ongoing. Of these two, when the former dies, there is no doubt that they will attain a divine abode. That is to say, that wherever they are headed next will be fruitful for them. But please tell us what will be the fate of the latter, whose conflict is still ongoing, when they die. Shriji Maharaj explained, on waging war, one may face Vanyas or someone from a weak Varna. Consequently, they may win easily. Another person, however, is confronted by a battalion of Arabs, of Rajputs, Khattis and Kolis, who are very difficult to win in battle with. Certainly not as easy to defeat as Vanyas. I don't know who the Vanyas are, but whoever they are, they're easy to defeat. Therefore, their fight continues. If, in the process of such fighting, they win, then all is well and good. But if while fighting, one does not give in to their opponents, despite their attempts, and if they were to die at that moment, would their master not be aware of their valiant efforts? Would they not appreciate that, compared to the one who faced the easy opposition of the Vanyas, this person faced formidable opposition that was difficult to overcome? The master would indeed be well aware of both situations. In the same way, the master of the whole universe is sure to help such a person as you have described. They would believe this person is faced with the overwhelming force of fluctuating thoughts, yet they are still putting up a gallant fight. Therefore, they deserve to be congratulated. Realizing this, the divine does help them. For this reason, then, one should remain carefree and not worry in the least. And perhaps this has implications when it comes to those who are struggling with mental health. What is in store for them in their afterlife if they are unable to befriend their mind and end up leaving this body? Well, at least according to these words, that the universe acknowledges that there was a formidable fight going on in one's mind, and your efforts are not for nothing. And this makes intuitive sense to me as well. I hope it will for you as well, that no matter what you're going through, the effort is always acknowledged, even if you don't end up winning the fight. One should continue to have a kind of reverence for the divine caretaker in the same fashion, keeping the Sant, the divine personalities, predominant, and stay away from Kusangis, people who are not going to influence you in ways that will benefit you spiritually. Shriji Maharaj thus replied in a joyful manner. I like that, Jenna. Personal struggle. Thereafter, Jiva-bhai of the village of Jaska asked Nityanand Swami, how does unfaltering faith in the divine develop? Nityanand Swami replied, if one avoids the company of Kusangis and constantly keeps the company of sadhus, monks, then by listening to the talks of those sadhus, and you can imagine that a sadhu just means someone who has devoted their life to connecting with the divine, unfaltering faith in the divine will develop. However, if one keeps the company of Kusangis, people who are all about worldly success, for instance, such unfaltering faith will not develop. Again, Shriji Maharaj said, "Allow me to answer that question." Continuing, he said, "One should cultivate faith in the divine for the sole purpose of the liberation of one's jiva, their individual soul, but not out of a desire for some material object. For example, if I practice satsang, participating in spiritually minded gatherings, my ill body will recover. Or, as I am childless, may I get a child. Or, my sons are dying, may they stay alive. Or, since I am poor, may I become rich. Or, if I do satsang, I will regain my lost assets." And I think we are familiar with this idea that many people pray for the divine for material things that may come, that might go. One should not practice satsang harboring desires for such gains. If one does practice satsang, true association, while nourishing such desires, then one may become a very staunch satsangi if those desires are fulfilled. So it's a bit of a gamble that you can develop this association for the divine, but only if they do what you want, right? But if your prayers aren't answered, then now you don't like them anymore. So it's you're gambling your faith in this way. But if one's desires are not fulfilled, one's faith will diminish. Therefore, one should practice satsang solely for the liberation of one's jiva, for the attainment of the ultimate freedom, of happiness wherever one goes, of true peace, joy, bliss. One should not harbor any desires whatsoever for material objects. Besides, if there are 10 members in a household and all 10 are faced with death, then is it a small feat if even one is saved? Or if one was destined to have to beg for food but received a rotlo to eat instead, is that a small feat? In these cases, one should believe that although everything was going to be lost, at least this much has been saved. In the same way, even if extreme misery is due to befall one, that misery would certainly decrease slightly if one were to keep the refuge of the divine. The jiva, the individual soul, however, fails to understand this. It is as if one who is to be executed on a shuli. I don't know what a shuli is. Something to get executed on, I guess. Gets away with the suffering of a mere pinprick. Such is the difference. There is a story illustrating this. Many thieves lived in a particular village. Of these thieves, one of these thieves often kept the company of a sadhu, of a spiritual seeker. Once, while the thief was on his way to visit the sadhu, a thorn pierced his foot, penetrating it completely. As a result, his foot became swollen, and he was unable to accompany the other thieves to steal. The other thieves, who went to steal, broke into a king's treasury and escaped with a great deal of money, which they duly shared among themselves. Naturally, a lot of money came their way. On hearing this news, the parents, wife, and relatives of the thief, who used to sit with the sadhu and who was injured, scolded him. "Because you went to the sadhu instead of going to steal, we lost out. The thieves who did go to steal returned with a lot of money." Meanwhile, the king's army arrived, arrested all of the thieves, and took them away to be executed on a shuli. The injured thief was also caught and consigned to execution. However, all of the villagers and the sadhu bore witness. This particular man was not involved in the theft, as he had been hurt by a thorn. The thief was thus released. In the same way, if a person who practices satsang, true association, were to face the suffering of being executed on a sholi, God forbid, whatever a sholi is, it would be reduced to the pain of a mere thorn prick. There's a subtle reasoning here that no matter what your karmas are, no matter what you have to face as a result of your past actions, just by the association of something higher, the pain gets dissolved. Perhaps not completely, but an easy way to transcend a lot of the unnecessary part of the suffering is to bring your mind to something higher. After all, I have asked of Ramanand Swami, if your satsangi, your spiritual gathering participant, is destined to suffer the distress inflicted by the sting of one scorpion, may the distress of the stings of millions and millions of scorpions befall each and every pore of my body, but no pain should afflict your satsangi. Moreover, if the begging bowl is written in the prarabdha, the karma that's unfolding since birth in your destiny of the satsangi, may that begging bowl come to me, but on no account should your satsangi suffer from the lack of food or clothing. Please grant me these two boons. I asked this of Ramananda Swami, and he happily granted it to me. Therefore, even if worldly miseries are destined to befall anyone practicing satsang, true association, they do not. Anyhow, material objects are all temporary, so if a person practices satsang, entertaining desires for such objects, then doubts will certainly cloud their faith. Therefore, other than the desire for the liberation of one's own jiva, their own soul, one should practice satsang, having no desires whatsoever. Only then will unfaltering faith develop. This is only a portion of the detailed discourse delivered by Shriji Maharaj. But it ends there. So thank you for listening, and thus we conclude reading from Gadhadā 170. That was a bit of a longer one. But as I said, when the Paramahansas gather, you're in it.